Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. The time is now a business case for smart waste technology. We're happy to have you here today. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the editor-in-chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by OnePlus Systems today. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions in the question box in that panel. You can send your questions in at any time, and they will be addressed after the presentation. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the panel, so please be sure it's expanded so you can access that question box. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, you can send a message to us via that question section as well, and someone on our team will answer you privately. If you're interested in continuing education credits, please note you'll receive a certificate of attendance and an email from Facility Executive after the webinar, and you can report that to your association to the CEUs. Now I'd like to introduce your speakers, Keith Woodward and Eric Okonovich. Keith is Executive Vice President of Marketing at OnePlus Systems, and he has more than 20 years of experience at high technology companies. His experience in high velocity SaaS marketing, product strategy, product marketing and management, media relations, and M&A. Prior to OnePlus, Keith was the VP Marketing at Sphera, a leading EHS software company. Eric, who you'll also hear from today, is Senior Product Management at OnePlus Systems. He's a data-driven business and product leader with more than 15 years of experience in data analysis, product management, and developing data-driven strategies. He's using data and analysis to uncover and include actionable insights that have driven increased revenue and in turn profits for companies like the Tribune Company, the National Safety Council, and OnePlus Systems. Eric graduated from Michigan State University with a degree in political economy. So we'll hand it over to Keith and Eric, and I believe we have an agenda to first go over to see what we'll talk about today. Thank you. Hi, Keith. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for that and the introductions, and thank you so much to Facility Executive Magazine. We're very much looking forward to working with on this particular webinar today, and welcome to everyone. What we'd like to talk about today, just a kind of a brief overview of the agenda. We'd like to talk to you a little bit about the state of waste today and really how it's changed, particularly over the last few months, and the impacts that it's having on today's facilities and sites and organizations across the globe. And then we're going to kind of insert the ideas behind what are the drivers behind using a smart technology on your waste operations, really kind of prefacing the facts around rethinking and retooling part of your facilities in order to address the new normal. And then Eric will go in through a lot of the use cases and kind of show you how this technology works in action to really drive value and benefit. And then we'll open it up and we'll address some of the questions that are coming in. But I think, Ann, before I go to the next slide, I think you had a poll you were going to share.
Yes, we did. Thank you. We wanted to ask you out in the audience a question that's on the minds of many of us as we talk to our peers in the industry, and we were hoping to get your insight before we begin the presentation. So as you'll see there, how has COVID-19 affected your operations to date? And you can please select all that apply. So please take a moment to cast your vote there, and we will show the results shortly. As you can see there, it's increased emphasis on safety, stress on the supply chain and operations, increase in remote working, cutting. Have you seen immediate effect at this point, several months in? So please take a moment to select all that apply, and we will show the results momentarily.
Yeah, and I think this is pretty consistent with most businesses in the industry right now. We've kind of gone through a phase of let's try to hit normalcy and keep our employees safe. Let's try to maintain business continuity. And now we're entering kind of this third phase, and how do we retool? And we'll talk a lot about that as we go through the slides.
That's great. Yeah, and here we go. Let's see. So yeah, as you can see, 84% increase in remote working, 81% increased emphasis on safety, 68% stress in supply chain and operations, cutting back on staff, and no immediate effect, 3%. So there you go, Keith, as you can see there.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty, I don't know if Eric, you have something. I think it's the first two and three. The first three are very, very consistent. I think it's the safety, and we'll give some examples on some of the supply chain pressures we've seen, and obviously the increase in remote working.
So yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm jealous of the no media effect. Wherever it is, kudos to you guys. I'm so jealous. But yeah, I think we see that with the people we've talked to, right? It's been a couple of different issues and a big change for a lot of people, and a lot of emphasis now on safety and a lot of emphasis now on this the stress of this change management, and we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, great. Well, let's get started. We'll go to the next slide. So just a little bit of background about who we are, just one slide. OnePlus Systems has been around for more than 30 years, specializing in the area of intelligent container monitoring. And I use the word container because a lot of times we talk about waste and recycling compactors, but also we have, whether you're supplying lubricants to fresh oil containers or feed or clothing bins, all of these things are containers. And fullness is important, and as we service this. And so we provide intelligent solutions to really improve their operational savings around these containers, managing these containers. And really it's ultimately guided through transparency, automation, and intelligent insights. And we'll give you some of these examples as we go through the presentation. One of the things I wanted to talk about, you'll hear this, you heard me speak this earlier, and I want to say really today's objective is to really help help educate our market, educate our prospects, our clients, our partners, that this is an opportunity now as we begin to reopen with some fears and new normals, to rethink and begin to think about retooling. I'll use some research and some recent sightings in the news recently on how organizations are beginning to retool parts of their operation in advance of the reopening. And so I just want to make sure that's kind of, I hope if anything, I leave all of you with the idea of maybe we should retool parts of these places where we can automate, where normally we would have humans intervene. So it wasn't too long ago, a few months ago, we were pretty normal. We knew most of our supply chain was fairly predictable. We knew the outcomes, distribution channels were understood. We knew how to, retailers knew exactly what they had to have on the shelves, how they had to price them. They knew what levels of inventory. Everything was predictable to some extent, for the most part. And then COVID-19 happened, and everything became chaotic, right? And this is not news to anyone, but it really put pressures of uncertainty. It was unpredictable. We have a lot of customers in the food process, food manufacturing. The amount of stress on their supply chain and their distribution channels just became completely disrupted. And that had a huge impact on their waste operation, because all of a sudden their volumes shot through the roof. It was unpredictable and it was completely unsafe. And so, had some of these clients looked at, had they had tools in place prior to this, could they have avoided that? Who's to know? Recently, the Q1 earnings reports came out of the waste industry. And I wanted to kind of go with some sightings that we learned from that. And it was really from 7 of the publicly traded North American waste management companies. And the first thing is known as, yes, the waste industry is very resilient. But there are 5 key pandemic trends that we kind of drawn from this. And yes, volumes are beginning to come back gradually and somewhat incomplete. One of the ones that I thought was interesting was that obviously with residential volumes increasing away from the commercial landscape, it stressed a lot of business models for a few of these specialized waste management vendors. So they're now beginning to rethink how they re-enter this new market, this new reality, with probably more and more of that volume continually shifting to residential, with more people working from home. They were flexing costs quickly and working leaner. A lot of furloughs, unfortunately, with their drivers, but they were looking at minimizing trips that they didn't need to take. And we'll kind of go through how they can do that. It's always a busy M&A activity in that industry, and it slowed down, but it's still occurring. But I thought one of the interesting pieces here was the last one. No CEO or CO knows what's coming next. There's still a lot of uncertainty. Yes, the economy is resilient. We know we'll bounce back, but there still is fears around what the new landscape will be in terms of how waste will be generated. We did a survey several months ago. This was in January. This is pre-COVID. And it was a lot of facilities managers and EHS professionals and plant and maintenance supervisors. And basically the survey was really just designed to ascertain and understand, what is the appetite for smart technologies in your waste operation, but more so, how are organizations managing and viewing their waste management program today as it relates to things like business objectives, KPIs, sustainability, and so on. And I wanted to share a couple of the results that I found pretty intriguing. One of the first one was, we asked them, what prevents you? This is probably one of the last questions we asked, was what prevents your organizations from using smart technology to improve your waste program? The number one, by far, 42% felt it was just a sheer lack of awareness. They didn't even know these tools existed. Okay, and that can be addressed. The second thing that came out was, and this kind of goes in the case of helping to establish a business case, is they felt that they need to educate senior executives on the solution and the benefits. And that was an overwhelming 25%. And let me kind of connect the dots here. Many of the organizations also felt comfort in knowing that it's managed by a third party, their hauling partner. And some felt that they had other cost savings initiatives that were far greater. And the one was about they perceived it having too much change management effort required. And we'll address those through some of Eric's use cases. But I thought that was very interesting, that the awareness and the need to educate. Because as we see across a lot of our industrial manufacturing companies, a lot of energy companies using IoT technology and reaping massive amount of money in terms of savings and operational efficiencies by using these technologies to improve parts of their operation. One of the things I also want to share, leading global management firm, Bain & Company, has been building a piece around the coronavirus, how it may inspire another great retooling. And one of the quotes I found really interesting I want to share was, they put it back to World War II, and where industries were really pressured. Supply chains were broken, distribution was broke, all these things were broken, but the strong companies that were able to flip on a dime and retool their businesses were able to sustain and become successful. So those that did not pivot and did not retool or rethink where they could be better, they failed. It kind of goes back to the earlier story about the waste industry and the earnings report, saying that the volume shifting to the residential from the commercial really put stress on several of the waste management companies' business models, only to the extent that they were not focusing on residential as much, to more or less. So how will they change? How will they pivot? How will they retool to address these new realities? Another one I thought I wanted to share before we get into some more of the meat is, they talked about, what we said earlier based on the poll. A lot of the CEOs they've met with, the first phase was ensuring the safety of their people, and then, maintaining business continuity toward recovery. And then as they're restarting their business, as the lockdown eases. But they also said but as things will be normal, as they were 6 months ago. But they said the best CEOs are considering how to retool their companies for a new world, one that will be highly unpredictable. And I thought this was interesting, one that's characterized by increased polarization, market disruptions, local market disruptions, and heterogeneous government policies. I think this is very interesting, because I think this is impacting us in our facilities, in our organizations, on how we have to address some of these outside forces. So
can I kind of put a bow on that last kind of comment? So, a lot of you guys are having these conversations now. 97% of you guys are having these changes, these forces that are forcing you guys to rethink your business, right? Rethink the facilities and how things are happening. And as such, I would just encourage all of you to make sure that your waste operation is part of that conversation, right? It's maybe something that's not always on top of mind for a lot of businesses, but I think it's an important part of the business. I think it ties to both, there's an economic, financial impact, but there's also a health and safety impact as well for your employees and your customers as well. And so when you're having these rethinking, these retooling conversations, make sure to include your waste operations in there as well.
It's a great point. So I'm getting ready now. This part of the presentation, we're going to really give you some insights and some context of what this looks like. But know that one of the drivers, and these drivers are not new for using smart technology for your operation. But I'm just going to go through 3 drivers quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and he's going to go put a little more context behind this. And the first reason it's around visibility and control. We call it visibility and control, but really it's about transparency. Whether you have one facility with 2 compactors or 1 compactor, say for example, or 13 or 14 or 500, right? No matter what, you need to understand where those are, what locations are at, and the actual real-time status of those, right? So that gives you and authors that control factor, what you can't control, what you can't see. The next piece, once you have transparency and control, you can now have automation, and that automation drives efficiencies across the organizations, whereby you can begin looking at establishing KPIs and benchmarks and using that to work with your partners, whether they be your haulers or other third parties, to making sure SLAs are met. And the last thing, and this kind of ties to what Eric was saying earlier, we often talk about waste diversion initiatives, and yes, we can show you how that can help manage the effectiveness of your diversion efforts, but it's also about that reporting, but also about mitigating the safety incidents that could be occurring in the back of those docks where the waste is being collected. So, Eric, I'm going to hand this over to you because this is going to be tying into some of the context you're bringing forth.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So, again, when we talk about visibility and control, what we're really talking about is getting rid of that unpredictability, right? So, in order to get predictive or to figure out what's going on, and a lot of operations depends on the ability to forecast and to predict your business. In order to get there, you really need the visibility and control, and you need data as well to do that. So, our system does this through a centralized remote managed system, so you can actually manage your entire waste operations from remotely or from one location. Really, now people now are working from home. A lot of people are working remotely, or away from a facility, and so they can now do that from anywhere they want to be. We have a customer that manages the entire waste operations from their location in Austin, Texas, through the entire state of Texas, if not their surrounding states as well. And so they can do, and I'll show you what they're doing, but they can do some things as well. Real-time alerts. Again, you want to get data as quick as possible, as accurate as possible. So you want things pushed to you sometimes. Sometimes you don't want to log into a system, and this will do that. And then if driving down into a compactor and identifying trends. But really the key is bringing the waste operations up front, clearing away the clutter, getting good data quickly and accurately, and then bringing some sense of order and predictability to your business.
Right, and just before I go to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that I think that it's important to know that you're going to see some screenshots here and some actual use cases, and we don't foresee any of our customers logging into this thing every single minute of the day. Okay. But the point is, we're collecting all of this data for you, and then we're serving you, whether it be a notification, an email, to give you updates onto the status and making sure that your waste operation is running normal. Okay, and I think that that's important to know, because sometimes it could be overwhelming, but it's really not. It's really not meant to be. It's meant to be a system that's autonomous and just running, but also giving you all of the information from wherever you are at any time.
So this is an overview of a demo account that we have of a grocery chain that we have. And so you'll see that it actually shows all the locations. And so this will allow the user or waste operations manager to actually see all of their locations, and then they can see what status their compactors are, empty, in use, full. And then we have flags on the side to Keith's point. And these are conditions that will actually highlight specific instances or trouble or something that they need to look at, be it that something's not working correctly on one extreme, all the way to another one as, hey, we missed a pickup, or we're getting close to a full, whatever that could be. And there's a whole bunch of conditions that our system has that be triggered. But again, it allows you to focus on something. So if you're a large organization, you have 300-400 locations with 1 or 2 compactors per locations, to expect somebody, to Keith's point, to go through this mound of data is unrealistic, right? And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to give you the visibility and control, but it actually direct you as well. And we know you guys are busy. We want to make sure we are as actionable as possible with our data. So this is an actual site level dashboard as well. And there's a couple things I want to highlight on this and kind of some stories as well. The big one on the top is KPIs, and we're really moving towards putting more and more of these key performance indicators in there going forward. And what this does is, again, allows the user to surface important information without digging. You know, a lot of the times, to Keith's point earlier, they don't want to go through a lot of data. They don't want to go through all their compactors. They don't want to go through all of the locations. This allows a user to see something at a surface at a point level, at high level, and see that, and they can actually start benchmarking now, right? So they have a key performance indicator. They can compare sites to sites, or even devices within that site to the site as a whole, to see if something is an anomaly or needs to be looked at further. So it's a more actionable thing. It allows the user to more easily identify trends, identify problem areas, and be actionable, and then move on to their day and do other things besides spend their day looking at their computer screen.
Absolutely. And I think this is another great point to look at so many different conditions. So whether is there something wrong? Are we not generating the production we thought? Or is it maybe, this is a great way to manage the relationship with your hauler, to make sure those KPIs and those SLAs are met as well.
And so let me kind of put a bow on this. I'll give you an example that we have. So we have a customer in the Southeast that does entertainment. They have a big facility. They have a lot of compactors on there. And they actually use this system to allocate resources depending upon what sections are busier, which has the higher trash generation. They know where to send their workers, right? And so one of the things that we talk about is, we'll talk about the next slide, is saving money and being efficient. That's more than just a reduction in the line item of the trash. It's also about allocating resources, allocating manpower, and that's actually a bigger cost for a lot of places, right? You know, everyone is experiencing more work with less people, and so to being able to allocate resources by using this data and saying, do I have increases in production, increases in trash? This will allow you guys to help. It's another good data point to help allocate your resources more efficiently, and therefore, hopefully people are safer and that you can do more with less, which everyone's gonna have to do right now.
Great point.
Yeah, so these two kind of tie together, right? So the visioning and control and the operational efficiency really tie together. There's a very strong bond between the two. In order to be operationally efficient, you need the visibility and control, and the visibility and control helps you be operationally efficient, right? So there's that yin and yang and the combination.
If I could just chime into one other example, we have a large distribution company, a logistics company business that we work with, and they literally the initial reason for the purchase of the software, the sensors, was to help manage and reduce the cost of their waste operations. Over time, as they've seen the benefit, what happened? They transitioned. We were getting calls from their procurement, and we know procurement being very conscious to cost. They said, hey, listen, we need sensors on these locations, and it had nothing to do with cost savings. It had everything to do to eliminating the need to put people, one, their staff at risk, but two, also to have their staffs continuously check the state of the compactor or the state of the bins and to call it in, while they could be focusing on more mission critical operational tasks. So to what he was saying earlier, there really is, it sounds trivial, but it's a really interesting, and I'll bring this up later, is automate what you would normally require humans.
And I'll say, when I talk to customers and talk to people in the business industry, that's usually the driver. The initial driver might be a cost saving, but the reason that the benefit that allows them to say, hey, this is the real benefit, is that operational efficiency. And I think that's going to, with COVID-19, I think that's going to be more and more of a driver, right? Because in the present state, a lot of people are sending someone back to check the compactor if it's full, right? And compactors aren't the most sanitary, cleanest thing in the world. And so if we can automate that and mitigate that risk, and we'll talk about that, in the next slide as well, that's a huge benefit. So there's not only a cost savings, there's an operational efficiency, but there's also a safety as well. And so it's all kind of put together, but the operational efficiency is very important. And it's not just, a line item of my garbage went from X to Y. It is a bigger picture now, and it's becoming more and more of a bigger thing, and people are starting to look at operational efficiency as a holistic thing. And that's why I say when you're talking about retooling your business, make sure to include waste operations because it is such a big part of people's business and they don't realize it. So this is the actual dashboard of our screen, and there should be at the top right. Keith, I think there's one more box if you press. Yep. There you go. So we talked about KPIs previously. These are on at the device level, right? And so the same KPIs are at the device level or at the site level, so you can compare them more easily, right? If you have 3 contractors at a site, all 3 would have a device dashboard, and then be one for the whole site. And you can compare the device to the site and see if something is an anomaly or is working. A problem child, as I heard someone call it the other day. So you can know what to address, what issues to talk about in a quick way. The other big thing on the top right is those actions. One of the benefits of this is the ability to work remotely. A lot of people need to do that now or are doing that now for safety reasons. I was one of them. So the system allows you to do an advanced pickup, which is basically sending a notification to your hauler to pick up the trash. And you can do that through a button. Just press that button and it will send a notification. We partner with a lot of haulers. And so we have either API call-ins or an email, or there's various ways depending on who we deal with to get information to them to actually schedule a haul. So we can do that through this operations. And I'll give you an example. We have a grocery chain in the Southwest that is in the Texas area. They were having a hurricane that was coming up the coast in the Galveston area, and they wanted to clear the compactors before the hurricane occurred. They can actually do that through this by at the device or at the site level, and actually in bulk send out the notifications remotely to their hauler and says, we need you to pick up all of these before the hurricane occurs. It's a nice way for them to do that. They can do that remotely. They don't have to be on site to do that. They can do it in bulk, which is nice as well. And then it allows them to be a good neighbor, and B, it helps them operationally, right? Because what happens before those hurricanes, they have a lot of traffic, and so they need to clear out their compactor beforehand. Even though it's not empty and not full, they need to empty it out because they know they're going to have a rush of business because people are hoarding for supplies before that. So that this tool lets you do that as well.
Eric, if I could just chime in really quick, I think that kind of goes back to the transparency and control aspects of what we're trying to as a driver. The one thing I'll point out, you see obviously on the right, you see that the red, yellow, green, and that's just our gauge, it's our PSI. And one of the things that we do with the 30 years of experience is like we have these algorithms that we put together that actually correlates that PSI being generated with every compaction on that compactor to fullness. And we understand what fullness is for a 35 or a 45 yard compactor. We understand how to factor in local weight limit conditions that you're not supposed to travel with over certain tons. So all those things are configured and factored in. So you get the most optimal and accurate read and an optimal pick every time it's picked up. And that's kind of what you're viewing on this chart below, the red being full, green being low, and each one of those blue lines represents a compaction. So as it reached that threshold, that those notifications are triggered, and then you can see it obviously was emptied and picked up. So this is a view of a very good schedule or very good efficient compactor.
Yeah, you'll see just some couple points. You'll see some peaks and valleys, and that's normal. And again, there's 2 things that we have here. We have the algorithm, which is great. And being on the tech side, I wholeheartedly support and think it's wonderful. But we also have, the customer care team that's been there for 30 years, 30 years experience. And so together is really both sides of the coins really needed in order to optimize the trash pickup, right? You can't really do one without the other and be optimized. But I want to bring back to another point being the notifications. Keith talked about, logging in the system, and we have those notifications where things could go automatically. So when a trash compactor is full based on the algorithm, which has a bunch of different data points to figure out the algorithm, it'll automatically send out a notification to the hauler. A lot of times people are calling the hauler, either A, on a schedule, which is not efficient, or a B, they're actually going back and checking 3 or 4 times a day to see when it's full. Obviously, that's a resource that not many people don't have anymore to do. There's also a safety risk to have somebody go back and keep checking the compactor on a regular cadence to do that. So this system will automatically do that, and it will actually take care of everything. It will know when it's full. It will send a notification to your hauler. The hauler will actually click a button to say, we got it, and then this is where we're going to pick it up. all of that's tracked through the system. It's all automated, and again, you can do that remotely, so you don't even have to be on site for that anymore. So we're taking all that away from the frontline worker who has more important things to do, managing your customers, managing their own safety and managing the safety of their coworkers. So it's a good thing to keep saying automate where we can, and this is definitely something that you can do to automate.
Yeah, it's an autonomous system. Right.
So the last thing is the EHS, and so Keith comes from the environmental world, I come from the safety world, and so we're both acutely aware of the importance of this. It's one of the problems we've seen, and we'll talk about the next slide, is it's hard sometimes to quantify sustainability, right? How effective it is. There's a couple ways that we do that in order to actually determine if your diversion program is actually effective. So this is a nice tool to have in the back pocket when you're going to your exec team and you're saying, well, listen, we're doing all of this diversion, is it actually working? And so you're going to have some data to do that. And the other thing is, again, mitigating necessary employee risk. It's a big factor for you guys, as you said in the poll. We've seen that with all of our customers. Ever since this pandemic has started, we've had these conversations, and this has always been something that's come up, is mitigating that unnecessary employee risk. What can we do to do that? And this is automating where you can, particularly in waste operations, which is a dirty process, is a huge benefit, and it allows you guys to do that and to make that a commitment to your employees, make that commitment towards safety, and save some money as well.
That's a great point.
So this is an example that we have where I was talking previously about diversion initiatives and how do you quantify it. And so we actually have a compare tool. And so this is an example of two compactors. The first one is a mixed waste or trash, and the one on the bottom is the recycling. Okay. And so what you can, if you look at that, you'll see there's a red dotted line, and that is when a diversion initiative happens. And you'll see the red boxes are the full events. We talked about, a full event and an empty event. The full event is when the system says, hey, I'm full, come pick me up. So what happens is the system goes, hey, pick me up. In pre-diversion, we had 3 pickups for mixed waste and 1 pickup for recycling. And then we had a diversion program going into effect. And you see how the time between pickups on the bottom has been closer and closer on the recycling side, and then on the waste side has been further and farther. So there, we were able to decrease 1 pickup for the user, so it's a nice cost savings. But the bigger one is it's a green initiative, right? We're able to divert stuff from trash recycling, and there are algorithms and formulas. Formulas is probably a better word to use in order to figure out. Okay, so if everything I've divert from a trash to recycle, what does that equal to CO2? EPA actually has a very nice calculator that does something similar to that. So using this kind of data, you can actually start showing cost savings, CO2 savings, poundage in savings, diversion as well. So it allows you to actually get some data for your green initiatives.
Right, and it's being able to also bring back to the table how are we doing. So we've launched this initiative. Well, how are you doing? And all I know right now is I split my waste into 2 compactors, waste and recycling. But now this gives you the information that can suggest its overall effectiveness. So that's important.
Yeah, and so as we talked about the unpredictability, and in order to get predictable, you need visibility and control, and you need data. And this is the data that you're going to start. Our data plan is going to start giving you that control and that predictability that people are going to need.
Right. So we've got just 2 more slides left, and we'll open up some Q&A. So again, I encourage all of you to ask questions. We'd love to hear from you. So what I want to do, because this kind of goes into helping establish a business case. So why are we talking about this now? And I think the first point needs to be made is the capitalizing on the emergence of IoT and artificial intelligence. We are seeing companies, especially in industrial manufacturing, and we are seeing facilities, and we're seeing a lot within our retail and food manufacturing and other industries look at taking advantage of the benefits of IoT because of its automation principles and how they can generate operational savings. Okay, and it doesn't have to be a massive undertaking. This is not launching a new billing software. This is a software that goes in. It goes very simply. Professionals are there because this is a service. There are onboarding professionals, experts working with you, but also providing you eyes behind the scene should anything go awry. The other piece of this, and this is also part of the retooling aspect, is let's look in our business and automate what would otherwise require staff. I'm in marketing. I am doing that at this very moment right now. I'm looking to automate some of the things that we do from a marketing operations perspective with some new systems to help us accelerate a little faster. No different from any kind of function inside an organization. Can we improve and automate what would take us too long? Your waste operation is no different. And it also provides an unprecedented amount of risk if not managed correctly. Prepare now, and this ties in, prepare now to eliminate future risks and impacts. So we're going to begin to reopen, and what should happen, heaven forbid it does, another phase breakout or another wave or something, another event that's causing chaos, that's causing unpredictability, causing variability. Remember, as these sensors are in place, variability is removed from the equation. Volume is removed from the equation. It will simply manage it and notify you when it's ready to get picked up. Therefore, you do not have to worry about overages, overspills, packing out, and all that kind of stuff. Overcoming the knowledge gap, and I think this is an important note. We're seeing a lot more the baby boom generation setting out to retirement, and we are seeing a shortage in certain manpower and certain job roles that are not seeing this the volume of resumes coming through. So we need to be aware of that, and so we need systems and data that can help avoid us from having to retrain people to do some rudimentary tasks. All the while having the data in place where new people can look at it and also make new decisions. But understanding that these kinds of tools can help remove some of that burden of retraining and while the baby boom generation continues to retire. And lastly, and most probably importantly, it's all really about operational effectiveness and cost savings. Through transparency and automation, we know that we can deliver a much more effective waste operation that will deliver more cost savings. So how do you build a strategy around engaging the C-suite, to EH&S, to sourcing? How do you do that? And I think, I usually use this slide in a lot of meetings, and it's really about understanding the drivers behind each of these core functions, and there may be different functions within your organization, and the drivers below this: cost savings, efficiency, reputation, and wellness, safety, compliance. All these things may play a part, but how you communicate that is how, and its importance is how you drive, how you start with building the business case with this senior executives to generate consensus and buy-in, because this is a consensus. This is just not something you agree to with a vendor. This is something that organizations need to be educated on, and you need consensus and you need overall buy-in, because this is an appetite or a DNA, say, of your organization that really wants to be effective and retool and automate where we can. So with no further ado, I think that's our last slide. So I think we'd like to open it up to some Q&A.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Keith, and thank you, Eric, for the presentation. And we will have some Q&A now. And thanks, everyone, for sending in your questions. We'll jump right in. Basically, I wanted to start with this first question. It's kind of to take the general look back. And the question is, a big concern we have is implementation and the change management involved with new procedures, especially at a time like this, when people are frankly taking advantage of the need for change, but it's obviously also a challenge as well, regardless. So can you talk to the type of commitment a system like yours entails, even including what the components are, and maybe walk us through briefly what that process might be for a facility who wants to put in this type of technology?
Yeah, I'll hit that one first, then I'll let Eric, because I know he's actually more glued to this than I am. So yeah, I mean, it can look overwhelming. It's not meant to be. I think the system is designed, first of all, as we install it, doesn't take very long to install. But we have professionals that are on board it because this is the expertise and the services that are required. So we'll onboard you. We understand your facility, your compactors, your containers, so we can configure and factor in all those settings. And then they are behind the scenes for at least 3 to 4 weeks, making sure things are operating optimally. And then you're kind of off and running. And they're also looking behind the scenes. So we're another set of eyes, always looking at the system, saying, hey, I saw his PSI fullness dropped, 200 levels. Let me call him. And so, or call her. And so it's having that advantage, because we know, look, you guys are running a facility, you're running an operation. Waste is just one facet of it. And this is a tool really to help be autonomous and remove the headache for you having to manage it and being aware, waking up in the middle of the night, oh shoot, did we call it in? I don't remember. Did Frank's been out? I don't know. So this is a tool that gives you complete control. And so we know that you're not going to be in the system every single day. But so that's why we serve you up information, whether it be email or text or other notifications, so that you can consume at least the data to give you the assurance that everything's running properly. I don't know if you want to add to that, Eric.
So yeah, it's kind of back up, so at a higher level. So it's an IoT Internet of Things product, right? So the solution. So there's two components. There's a hardware device. It's a sensor that actually plugs into the compactor. The other thing is this portal, which you log in, and the sensor talks to the portal and takes information and translates it. So that's kind of a high level what this system is, right? So it's two components: it's a hardware solution and a software solution. Behind that, there is a customer care team, which is very important, an onboarding team, an optimization team to actually help you get set up. So, to kind of speak to how that part of it, it depends on how involved you want to be. Again, there's a lot of experience, and there's a lot of factors that can change the settings of the device, the monitor, the sensor, right? It's not one size fits all, and we know that. Depending on the media mix, when I talk about that, a hardware store that throws out something is going to have different stuff in their hardware. It's got pallets and wood and metal. That's going to compress at a different rate than someone who is at a grocery store and has food stuff, right? And so that's different. We know that, and we can compensate for that. Judge changes, and we can compensate that for PSI levels and determining when something is full. And it's because of the experience we have with that. Because not only is every media mix a little bit different, but every compactor is a little different. And so this whole thing together kind of really is important. It's the holistic thing of the device and the sensor. Talking about the change management, the other thing I'll say is it depends on the user. Some users want to be involved and they want that full visibility and control, and that's great, and we can provide that information. We have a bunch of data, tons of data in there. And the other side, so that's one side. The other side is, listen, I got 100 things to do. This is just one small element of my product. I just want to know when something is, alert me when something goes wrong. And the system works with both, so you can do it either way. It just depends how involved they want to be. The actual installing and optimize and setting it up is a pretty painless task, right? Go on site, install a sensor, takes an hour or so to actually physically install that. It's not like you're offline for a day and your operations. It's not that kind of commitment. And then there's an optimization process where our experts will actually work with somebody maybe once or twice in order to optimize the system and figure out to get the readings exactly right. And once that's all set, we'll continue to monitor, but then it's not necessarily for you guys to log in on a daily basis to actually start seeing it. It's something that the system can take care of. But again, if you want to have that visibility and control where you want to see things on a more consistent basis, that is an option as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. I just want to we do have some other focuses coming in terms of our questions, but I do want to just stay on that for 1 minute in terms of the installation, because we did have a question come in, and Eric, you did go through the process, but I just want to double back on it. The question is, typically, is this the sensors, the system, is this installed by the hauler or the facility? But in my case, the compactors are leased from the waste hauler. It sounds like OnePlus and your staff does that, though. Can you clarify that?
So yeah, it depends. We work with haulers, and sometimes we'll work with the hauler to do that. Other times we'll do it directly to the customer. We do both. We do either or. The bulk of our business is we do a lot of direct work directly with them. Obviously, we're part of the waste operations, and so the hauler will be involved in that, if nothing else, just to get the notifications. But yes, we can do that. And again, we have experience working on it. It gets kind of tricky, right? Because some relationships are different than others, but that's something we've worked through.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just add that. Too, yeah, a lot of times our customers like to fulfill it through the hauler, and that's fine. We work with almost all of them. But in terms of the installation, maybe Eric, you may have said this, and if you did, forgive me, but on the actual physical installation, the actual sensor does not touch or get bolted onto the compactor. So whether you're leasing it, it's actually adjacent to it, outside, maybe on a wall or on a stand. And the only thing, how we connect to is to a transducer line that hooks into their PSI. And so it's very invasive. It doesn't impact the compactor physically whatsoever. I think that's important.
Yeah, so it needs to be a hydraulic. This system needs to be a hydraulic compactor, and we'll just tap in the hydraulic line.
Right.
But yeah, we're not plugging in or just doing anything to the compactor.
Yeah,
okay, wonderful.
Yeah, and it's slightly different with the closed top containers, like for lubricants or feed, or those are generally done. Those are really easy to install, and they just come with a simple bracket.
Okay, thank you. So another question about your system. It's regarding visibility. Does your system provide a map of the dumpsters and bins? Is that a piece of it? I mean, you had showed us a lot of those charts and graphs. So is a map, or is there, how, I guess, do you identify what's going on with each each container and compactor?
So I don't know if you go back, Keith, but at the site level, we do actually have a map with where they're located. So you'll see a number, how many compactors are at that location. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can call it whatever you want to, right? So you can call my device if you have a lot of retail or grocery will have a store number, and so they'll call their device by the store number name, because that's how they manage their business, and they can do that. There's also a map as well at the site and account level in order to actually visually see that and actually drill in. So there are maps to help navigate.
Thank you. And then I wanted to mention there was a slide where you had talked about the API. It was maybe 2 or 3 slides back, and well, the second slide back was talking about all the different stakeholders in addition to the facilities people we have on the line, obviously. And there's an interest in, you mentioned how the software can be have APIs to be plugged into EHS softwares. Is that something that you see your facilities customers doing, having an interest in sharing this data with the other stakeholders in their organizations?
So yeah, I'll answer it. So we're seeing it a lot with workflow optimization tools, softwares where they're using it for work orders. We're seeing that particularly with our larger retail customers. We're seeing some of it with their CRM tools as well. We have done EHS. It's not something that's as prevalent as I think it will be in the future. Definitely more so on the operations side, where it's actually part of their software where they actually manage their workflow and their payment of their vendors.
Right, and we see that too. I mean, we've seen a lot more surfacing around, especially at the facilities level.
Yeah.
Us coming in to, once a notification is sent out to a hauler, they want to generate that as a work order. And so it makes a lot of sense, kind of consolidating into those kind of broader facilities management platforms that some of these larger facilities are using.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears briefly and talk about the types of facilities and industry sectors that you've been involved with, that OnePlus Systems has been working with. I know you talked about a grocery, and I also know that from our work together that you worked with hospitality organizations. Are there? Can you talk about maybe the other sectors that you work with, or any kind of specific needs or trends you've seen there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so it's pretty broad. I mean, if you think of the largest probably footprint we have is you think about grocery, but manufacturing, because manufacturing is so broad, but discrete manufacturing, durables. But a lot of our facilities, logistics and distribution, even logistics and distribution centers for large retail providers, property management companies, either with commercial or residential. A lot of them working together, large event spaces, whether it's convention centers, stadiums, and then I'm trying to think of what I'm missing.
So retail in general, particularly in the hardware sector, and then the other one would be we do work with hospitals, and that's something that we've seen a increase in the last 2 months with the COVID-19. Work with medical facilities.
And if I could, a lot of healthcare, a lot of those facilities. So it's a pretty broad stroke. And then on the container side, we work with a lot of fresh oil providers that are providing oil to containers, whether it be Jiffy Lube or farmlands or whatever, or feed. And we also work with a lot of our native clothing bin donation company, anything where you're putting stuff into a closed bin that you need to understand when it's full to be either picked up or refilled. So, and if I could, Ann, there was a question that came up around PPE on how to dispose of that. And I think largely, yes. I mean, I'm assuming those will go out as something that is probably listed as a hazardous or a hazardous waste stream. But that's why we work with, whether they go into a compactor or not, we work with a lot of our partners, like our hauling partners that specialize in hospital waste removal. And that's really the key. And wherever you're putting those deposits, whether it's a compactor, we can help manage it. And maybe if it doesn't have to be managed so full, it needs to get out sooner, we can set those thresholds with the client and the partner.
Thank you. And yes, I did want to just jump on one specific question, and we probably have time for this one last question. There was a post-diversion initiative slide, and someone's asking, what is the odor issue faced on that? I guess trying to understand, obviously we all know how odor factors into waste, but what does that mean there?
That's a great question. So understanding what was in that waste stream. So it could be cardboard. It could be plastic, wrapping, or it could be a variety of things that do not really emit the odor. And so therefore that's what you would probably relate that long weight of trash. Yes, we work with a lot of clients, particularly in the more warm states, from California to Arizona to Florida. They have local regulations around odor, and so things have to get picked up and accordingly. But yeah, that would usually deem something that long, taking that long without emitting an odor issue. It would be generally related to the waste stream or what type of waste it is.
Yeah, so I mean, we work with a lot of grocery, and that's a concern we actually hear a lot, right, is the odor issue. And so when we're doing the optimization, when we're doing that setup, we'll take that, we'll have that conversation with you. And if that's a concern, particularly in warmer climates, Arizona, Texas, we'll compensate down. And actually, maybe it's not a completely full pickup, but it's 80% because there is an odor issue, or if it doesn't reach a certain day, we pick up because that is a concern, right? People want to be good neighbors, and they don't want their business to smell. I totally get that. So absolutely, that's something that we do all the time. We take that into consideration all the time when we do this up. And again, it goes back to, it's not a one size fits all solution. There is an optimization process. There is a setup process, and that's all things that are talked about during that process to make sure it's, as efficient as possible so that it's customized for you and it meets your needs, whatever those needs may be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank you both, Keith and Eric, for the presentation. It's been very interesting.
Great. I want to thank you.
And of course, OnePlus Systems for sponsoring the webinar and our audience for attending today and for sending in your questions and for your attention. I do want to point out that if anyone in the audience would like to learn more about OnePlus Systems, or if you'd like to take a deeper dive into what's been discussed today with Keith and or Eric, a facility executive is available to arrange a one-on-one video or phone call with these gentlemen. So an email will be sent out after the webinar with additional details on that, and you can indicate if you're interested, and then we'll work with you to schedule a call at a time that's most convenient for you, so you can ask your further questions and really dive in with these gentlemen. So also a recording of the webinar will be available online at facilityexecutive.com and also on the OnePlus Systems site. That's oneplussystems.com. So we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and have a great afternoon. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.